أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وأنصاره وأزواجه وبذريته أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah ta'ala, this evening we'll be taking a look at a very important topic, and that topic is relevant to every Muslim, male and female, adults as well as children. And this topic is the importance of nikah, marriage. The Arabic word nikah, or marriage, is the sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the prophets that came before, with the exception of Isa alayhi salam. He wasn't married. He is to return and get married, inshallah. Marriage was encouraged by Allah and His Messenger. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his wife Aisha, some Sahabas went to see her and questioned her about the behavior of the Prophet, his worship in secrecy. And they were three in number. Three young men came to the houses of the Prophet, and the Prophet's wife Aisha asked her about his worship in privacy. When they were told that at times he would pray until his legs became swollen, they said, where are we in comparison to the Prophet? Because the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all his mistakes are forgiven, the past and the future. So if his mistakes are overlooked, the past and the future, and he's so pious, where are we in comparison to him? So they considered their piety insufficient. So one of them said, Amma ana fa ana usalli al-layla abada. As for me, I shall pray throughout the entire night, every night. Another one, ana asum ad-dahr wa la uftir. I shall fast for a whole year without breaking my fast. And the third one said, ana a'tazil an-nisa fala atazawwaj abada. I shall abstain from women and I will never get married. I shall never get married. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when this news reached the ears of the Prophet, he came to them and said, Antum alladhina qultum kada wa kada. You are the people who speak and say this and that. Amma wallahi inni la akhshakum lillah. Nay, by Allah, I am more God-fearing in regards to Allah Ta'ala. Wa atqakum, and I have more taqwa than you in regards to Allah. Walakinni asum wa aftur wa usalli wa arqud wa atazawwaj an-nisa. Faman raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni. I have more taqwa than you, more piety. I am more God-fearing than you. And in spite of that, some days I fast and other days I don't fast. I pray some nights I go to bed. And I marry women. So any one of you who abstain from my sunnah, my example of marrying women, such a person is not of me. I'm quoting to you from Bukhari, volume 7, page 1. And this speech here tonight was taken from Sahih al-Bukhari. So most of the hadith you'll be hearing tonight will be coming from Sahih Bukhari, volume 7. And those of you who would like to read further on, when you go home, you read Sahih Bukhari, volume 7, inshallah ta'ala, and you will find all the hadith there. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya ma'ashar shabab, man istata' minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj, فإنه أغض للبصر وأحسن للفرج, ومن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء. O you young people of Islam, any one of you who is able to get married, let him or her get married. because it helps you to lower your gaze and it protects your private parts from shameful deeds. And if any one of you is unable to get married, let him fast. In your fasting, you will find your self-control. Bukhari, volume 7, page 4. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the marriage helps you to lower your gaze from lusting and it helps you to protect your chastity. And in the very first hadith of the Bab, the chapter, he said, if you don't get married, you are not of me, meaning you are not a proper follower of me. Now, whenever you are single, you are bound to engage in shameful deeds. Because Allah Ta'ala has created in us a spermatozoa, and Allah didn't create the sperm to remain in our body. It was created to come out. So if it doesn't come out in the legitimate way, it shall come out in the illegitimate way. So the illegitimate ways are approximately 10. The first is masturbation. And Imam Malik said masturbation is haram because Allah said concerning the believers, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, successful in these are the believers. Then Allah said they protect their private parts, except from their wives or their right and possess. Therefore, with this ayah, masturbation is haram, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal said masturbation is halal for the person who is afraid of zina. So the person who is locked up in prison and he's afraid of haram things, homosexuality for example, in prison, then he's allowed to masturbate. This is the aqidah or the fiqh of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. First, you shall lust. You will look lustfully at women. So single people, they lust. The third is fornication. The fourth, adultery. Fornication, cohabitation before marriage. The fourth, adultery. So you will say, if a man is single, how can he commit adultery? It's possible that a single man can commit adultery. If a man should be married and then his wife passed away, and then he slept with a woman who is not his wife, did he commit fornication or adultery? Huh? According to Christianity, he committed fornication. But according to Islam, he committed adultery. So we don't agree with the Christians in regards to nothing. We don't agree with the Christians in regards to who Allah is. We don't agree with them what fornication is. We don't agree with them as to what adultery is. We don't agree with them where Allah is. So if a man should be divorced, he has no woman, he's divorced. Then he slept with a woman who is not married to. According to Christianity, it is what? Fornication. But according to Islam, it's adultery. The fifth, heavy drinking, heavy smoking. The sixth, the fifth, heavy smoking. The sixth, heavy drinking. The seventh, lesbianism. The eighth, homosexuality. The ninth, bestiality. The 10th, rape. All these crimes are committed by people who are single. I repeat them quickly. The first, lust or hallucination. Lust, masturbation, fornication, adultery, heavy smoking, heavy drinking, lesbianism, homosexuality, bestiality, and rape. Imam Shafi said that the sperm is shar, is evil. The evil of sperm. So Imam Shafi said in his, I'm sorry, not Imam Shafi, An-Nawawi, when he was explaining Sahih Muslim, he said you need to get married to protect yourself from the evil of sperm, meaning it has to come out, and if it doesn't come out in the legitimate way, it shall come out in the illegitimate way. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said to his cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib, "Oh Ali, there are three things in life you're not allowed to delay. The first is your salah. Secondly, janazah. Whenever a person is dead, you're supposed to bury them. And the third is nikah, marriage." Then the Rasul said, إِذَا أَتَاكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ بِدِينِهِ وَخُلُقِهِ فَلْيُزَوِّجُوهُ إِلَّا تَفْعَلْ تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. In another hadith, fasad arid. whenever you have a daughter, a sister, and a man approaches you and asks for her hand in marriage, and you are happy with his character, his khuluq, and you're happy with his deen, marry him to her. If you don't, you create great fitna on the land. You create great fitna on the land. So it is not advisable in Islam for you to remain single. And the Rasul said, if you don't get married, you're not of me. So what is the correct opinion in regards to marriage? The first school of thought, marriage is halal. So it's up to you. You can get married if you want, or you can remain single if you want. The second opinion, marriage is mustahab, strongly recommended. The third opinion, marriage is fard, compulsory, wajib. So if you're not married, you're living in sin. And this is the school of thought of the Dahiriyya school of thought. These three opinions, you cannot follow them 100%. The most accurate opinion is marriage becomes compulsory on you the moment you fear falling into zina. So you, the Muslim male, you, the Muslim female, the moment you reach puberty and you fear that you may fall into zina, marriage becomes compulsory on you. You have no choice in the matter anymore. I've given you evidences proving the importance of marriage, and I shall give you 21 other evidences. Marriage is very important. Marriage is your comfort. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, "Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar." Oh Allah, give us the good of the dunya and give us the good of the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the hellfire. What is the good of the dunya? The Rasul said there are four things. The first is a pious wife. Secondly, a spacious house. The third, a reliable transportation. The fourth, a good neighbor. So the very first good thing of the dunya is a pious wife. So when you have a pious wife, it's your comfort. And the Rasul said the good woman, she has three qualities. Whenever you look at her, your heart feels tranquil. Your soul feels tranquil. You're happy with her. You feel comfortable with her. Whenever you command her, she obeys. Whenever you leave the home, she protects her chastity until you return to the home. The second evidence to prove that your marriage is your comfort, Surah Rum, verse 21. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. And from among the marvelous and wonderful signs of Allah is that He has created for you wives from among your own selves, so that you will find comfort in them. Surah Rum, verse 21. Marriage is your security, emotional security, sometimes financial security. So whenever a person is married, this marriage is an emotional security for the person, and you are supposed to say to your wife, I love you. If she doesn't hear this inside the house, and she heard it from another man outside the house, this is a disaster. Because everyone has a vacuum to fill, and the vacuum is to know that someone loves you. It is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to tell his wives that he loves them. The evidence from sunnah is Amr ibn al-As went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, who do you love best in this world? The Prophet, without thinking, he didn't have to think, contemplate, ponder, he said, Aisha. Then Amr ibn al-As said, who next? Her father. Who next? Umar. So if the Prophet ﷺ was able to tell Amr ibn al-As that who I love best in this entire dunya is Aisha, this is clear evidence that he, the Rasul ﷺ, used to make her feel emotionally secure. And the evidence from Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. From the wonderful and marvelous signs of Allah is that He created from yourselves wives so that you'll find comfort in them, and He, Allah, placed between your mawadda, love, and mercy. Surah Rum, verse 21. Your marriage is your deen. So the Prophet ﷺ said, your marriage is half of your deen. So fear Allah with the other half. Then the Prophet said, men normally marry women for 4 reasons. Because of their wealth, their beauty, their nobility, and their deen. Go for the woman who has deen because she will help you to inherit the paradise. So whenever you marry a woman who is strong in her deen, she makes you become strong, and vice versa. So it's like a person has a battery which is weak. His car cannot start. But your battery is strong, so you give him a jump lead and you start his car with your battery. So this battery gave your battery the start. So you marrying to someone who is strong makes you become strong. This is what the Prophet said, go for the woman who has deen. She will help you to inherit the paradise. Your marriage is your deen because it keeps you away from haram things. Your marriage is your deen because it helps you to protect your chastity. So the Prophet ﷺ said, whenever you see a woman and she creates in you, she stirs up in you romantic feelings, go home to your wife, because what your wife has, what that woman has, your wife has the same thing. So the person who is single, living in this society, and he sees a woman and she stirs up in him feelings, and he doesn't have any wife to go home to, what is he going to do? I'd like him to answer the question, the single man or the single woman. So marriage helps you to protect your chastity. And the only person who enjoys this contentment is a person who marries a pious, practicing Muslim male or a pious, practicing Muslim female. But as for the person who marries a person who is weak in Iman, you do not have this contentment. This contentment is enjoyed only by people who were meticulous and scrupulous, careful in choosing their marriage partner. Your marriage is your honor. Honor for yourself. Honor for your partner. Honor for your children. So whenever you have children out of wedlock, you weren't married, you dishonor your children. Whenever you live with a person without marrying to the person, you dishonor your partner. Whenever you have a successful married life, both you and your partner have honor in the society. Even kafirs realize the importance of marriage. So politicians, give you examples. Politicians like President of the United States of America and the Prime Minister of this country, the UK, whenever they are campaigning for an election, they always put their wife and children in front of the camera. Look at me, I was only married once in my life, and this is my wife, and these are my 3 children. So why is it that he makes sure to put his wife and children in front of a camera for the whole nation to see? Look at me, I'm a married man with wife and children. Because marriage is your honor. But if you should have 3, 4, 5, 6 divorces, people will say, look at him, he's a shaitan, no woman can live with him. Or vice versa. So your marriage is your honor. And whenever you have a child and you bastardize your child, you have the child out of wedlock, that child is stigmatized to the extent where some scholars say he cannot lead the other Muslims in prayer because he, the child, was stigmatized. So marriage is honor for yourself, your partner, and your children. Marriage protects you from evil thoughts and from lusting. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya ma'ashar shabab, man istata minkum al-ba'ah, falyatazawwaj. All you young people of Islam, males and females alike, any one of you who can get married, let him or her get married. Because it causes you to lower your gaze and protect your chastity. And anyone who cannot, let him or her fast. In your fasting, you'll find your self-control. And when I say marriage protect you from lusting, I mean male as well as female, because women also lust. So what's the evidence? The evidence is Surah Nur, verse 31, in which Allah said, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنْ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنْ. Tell the believing women to lower their gaze and be modest and to protect their private parts. So if women did not lust, why would Allah find it necessary to command them in Surah Nur, verse 31, to lower their gaze and be modest? Allah Ta'ala is not frivolous. Marriage is da'wah. Da'wah for your children. So children who were brought up in a successful Islamic marriage, these children, they want to get married when they reach puberty. But children who were brought up in homes that were shattered, broken homes, these children, they hate marriage. And they said, what's the point in getting married? So out of Kafirs in this country, they don't get married because they are from homes which their mothers and fathers, they live like animals in the African jungle. So they hate marriage. But whenever you get married and you live a happy married life, you give da'wah to your children to follow in your example. And you give da'wah to the other Muslims. And you give da'wah to the non-Muslims, the Kafirs. But if you should have a marriage which is always on the rocks, you're always breaking up, the Kafirs will say, well, you the Muslims, you're not better than us. You are riffraffs just like us. You are scums of the earth just like us. Look, you don't have any proper family structure. Your family situation is in the gutters just like us. But whenever you live a successful Islamic married life, you give da'wah to the Kafirs. Marriage is at-tawakkul, to put your trust in Allah Ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith collected by Mujma' Zawa'id, any one of you, any man who gets married or woman, because you fear falling into zina, Allah makes it compulsory upon him, Allah, to feed you. So marriage is at-tawakkul. Another story, and this story can be found in Bukhari, volume 7, page 15. A woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, I've given myself to you in marriage. And the Prophet looked at her, then the Prophet hung his head down. He wasn't in need of a wife at that particular moment. So a Sahaba jumped up. O Messenger of Allah, if you don't want to marry me to her. She was beautiful. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what do you have? He said, I don't have anything. The Prophet said, go and search in your house what you can find. He went, he searched. He couldn't find anything. The Prophet said, not even an iron ring to put on her finger. The man said to the Prophet, not even a ring made from iron to put on her finger I can't find. And the woman, she still sat down. In other words, I'm not going to leave until I find a husband. She didn't walk away, she still sat down. And then the man got up and left, and the Prophet called him back and said, do you know any surahs of the Quran? He said, yes. The Prophet said, do you know them by heart? هَلْ تَقْرَؤُونَهَا عَلَى ظَهْرِ قَلْبِكَ هَلْ تَقْرَهُنَّ عَلَى ظَهْرِ قَلْبِكَ. Do you know these surahs by heart? The man said, yes, I know surah such and such and such and such. The Prophet said, okay, I marry you to this woman, and your mahar is that you will teach her what you know of the Holy Quran. Because of this hadith, Imam Shafi said, a man can teach others the Quran and charge them, because the Prophet gave this woman to this man in marriage, and the mahar was for him to teach her what he knows of the Holy Quran. So this incident shows you that marriage is a tawakkul. This Sahaba, he didn't have income support, he didn't have dole, he didn't have welfare. It wasn't a welfare state, he didn't have anything, not even iron ring. And still he got married to the woman because the hadith is clear. If you get married out of fear for zina, Allah makes it compulsory upon himself to feed you. So marriage is a tawakkul. Marriage is safeguarding of your lineage, both in the dunya and the akhirah. So how on earth can you safeguard your lineage if you do not get married? This is why homosexuals, they are enemies of humanity. And whenever I meet people who believe in homosexuality, I always ask them, what if your father was homosexual? First I trap them. Are you happy with yourself? Are you happy with the life you are living? He said, yes, I'm very happy that I was born. I'm happy, I'm gay. So I'm happy. Can't you say I'm gay? And gay means happy. So I'm happy with the life I'm living. So I said to him, look, if your father was a homosexual, you will be born. So he's defeated. So marriage is the safeguarding of the lineage and the human race. And the Prophet ﷺ said, تزوجوا الودود الولود فإني مكاثر بكم الأمم يوم القيامة. Marry women who are loving and affectionate, women who are able to have children. Because it is by these women I will compete with the other prophets on Judgment Day to have the most followers. So whenever you get married, you increase the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, his followers, both in this life and in the hereafter. Marriage is the strengthening of the Islamic brotherhood and the Islamic sisterhood. So the Prophet ﷺ got married to Aisha and he built the brotherhood. He strengthened the brotherhood between himself and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. He got married to Hafsa and he built and strengthened the brotherhood between himself and Umar. He gave away 2 of his daughters to Uthman, so he built and strengthened the brotherhood between himself and Uthman. He gave away Fatima to Ali ibn Abi Talib, so he strengthened the brotherhood between himself and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Muawiyah was married, the Prophet was married to Habiba, the sister of Muawiyah, so Muawiyah was the brother-in-law of the Prophet. Abu Bakr Siddiq, radiallahu anhu, his father-in-law. Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, his father-in-law. Uthman, his son-in-law twice. Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, his son-in-law. And Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, his brother-in-law. So marriage strengthens the Islamic brotherhood and the Islamic system. Marriage puts a stopping to hatred and enmity between 2 warring factions. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had an enemy in Mecca. Who was that enemy? Abu Sufyan, one of the greatest enemies of the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ made Abu Sufyan his father-in-law by marrying his daughter, Habiba. And the enmity subsided. So Allah Ta'ala said in Surah 60 verse 7, عَسَى اللَّهَ أَن يَجْعَلْ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ عَادَيْتُمْ مِنْهُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَاللَّهُ قَدِيرٌ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Maybe Allah, those same people that you hate, those same kafirs that you hate, maybe Allah will place between you and them mawadda, love. Allah is capable of doing all things. Allah is most merciful, most forgiving. This commentators of the whole Quran said this verse in Surah 60, Surah Mumtahina, is mentioning Abu Sufyan. That even though there's enmity between Abu Sufyan and the Prophet ﷺ, because Abu Sufyan is a kafir and he, the Prophet, is a believer and the messenger of Allah, Allah will put mawadda, love between you, the Prophet, and Abu Sufyan, and this came to pass because he took his shahada. So he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, grant me 3 privileges. And this hadith is found in Muslim. He said yes. Number 1, command me to fight and kill the kafirs the way I used to fight against Muslims. The Prophet said yes, I grant you that. My son Muawiyah, grant me the privilege to make him your scribe, to write the Quran as it is being revealed. The Prophet said yes. The Prophet said, I have the most noble of Arabs and the prettiest of Arabs, Habiba. I give her to you in marriage. And the Prophet said yes. Now, Habiba was married to the Prophet before, isn't that so? So how do you explain Abu Sufyan saying to the Prophet, I give you Habiba in marriage, meaning I am 100% contented with you as my son-in-law. Number 12, marriage stopped tribalism, racism, and nationalism. Marriage puts a stop in to tribalism, nationalism, and racism. So you see the Prophet ﷺ used to marry from different tribes to unite the tribes. Mu'allafatul qulub. The Prophet ﷺ was living with a woman from Egypt, Maryam the Coptic, and when the Sahabas were going to Egypt, he said to them, beware, because in Egypt we have family ties. There was a tribe, Banu Mustalik, who hated Islam and Muslims, and when they were defeated and their women were taken as right and possessed, when the Prophet married to Juwayriyah, she embraced Islam, the Prophet married to her. All of the tribe embraced Islam, the whole tribe. So the Prophet married to one woman from one tribe, and the entire tribe embraced Islam. Aisha radiallahu anha said, I've never seen a woman who was of more barakah, more blessing to her people than Juwayriyah. Even her father, who was the leader of the tribe, embraced Islam. In a country where people love to marry their cousins, their own tribe members, that country has a lot of nationalism, tribalism, and racism. Like some countries in Africa, in the Middle East, where people they love to marry their cousins, you'll find that in these societies, you'll always have a lot of tribalism, nationalism, and racism. Maybe a black man hates white people, or maybe a white man hates black people. But because he has his daughter marrying to a person from the other race, his daughter who's black marrying to a white man, or his daughter who's white marrying to a black man, it cuts down the racism between the two races. But if there is no marriage between the two races, then the racism will never stop. So marriage puts a stop into tribalism, racism, and nationalism. Marriage is the spreading of the deen, knowledge of the deen. So the scholar teaches his wife, and she acquires a lot of knowledge about the deen. This was one of the reasons why the Prophet ﷺ married to Aisha. So Aisha was the greatest scholar of Islam of all times. The Prophet married her, and she memorized thousands of hadith. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, there is no subject on Islam, whether it is your shahada, salah, zakah, som, hajj, whatever it may be, there is no subject in which Aisha is not a scholar of that particular topic, that particular subject. Where did she get the knowledge from? Her husband, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Not only do you pass on the knowledge to your wife, but also to your children. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal was a scholar, and his son Abdullah was also a scholar. He passed on the knowledge to his son Abdullah. Marriage is sadaqah jariyah, because the Prophet said, whenever you die, all your pious deeds are stopped, except three. Number one, knowledge which you leave behind. Number two, sadaqah jariyah, maybe you built a masjid, an Islamic school, and people continue to benefit from that masjid or that Islamic school, so you get the barakah even in the grave. Number two, your knowledge. And number three, a pious child which you leave behind to make dua for you. So even in the grave, you get the barakah because you leave behind a pious child who continues to make dua for you. But what if you didn't get married and have that pious child? How would you be able to have him making dua for you, or she making dua for you? Marriage is an act of kindness. So sometimes a rich man marries a poor woman and treats her well. So the Prophet ﷺ said 3 people will be given a double reward. Number one, the man who is of the people of the book, a Christian or a Jew, people of the book. He believes in his prophet, his own prophet, whether it is Musa or Isa, and he believes in the Prophet Muhammad as well. he embraced Islam and believes in the Prophet Muhammad as well, he will be given a double reward. Secondly, a man who was loyal to his master as well as Allah. The third, a man who has a slave girl, he teaches her, he gives her good manners, he teaches her the deen, gives her good manners, free her, and then marry to her. He will be given a double reward. Marriage is a day of joy and happiness for the Muslims. It creates joy and happiness for the Muslims. Because when there's a nikah, you wear the best clothing. The women, they put their makeup on sometimes. They mix with each other. And you're allowed to play drums and tambourine and sing. And you have a walima. And the Prophet said to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Awlim walau bishab. Have a walima even with one sheep. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith collected by Bukhari, volume 7, page 76, the worst food is the food of a walima, a wedding feast, in which the rich people were invited and the poor people were denied. They didn't get any invitation. And anyone who received an invitation and he didn't turn up, such a man disobeys Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger. Marriage is a jihad. So you need the qualities of a mujahid to be a married man. So the scholars of Islam said, if you want to know if the man is ready for jihad, look at the woman who he marries and look at his marriage itself. So marriage and jihad are twin sisters of each other. All the tools you need on the battlefield, all the ingredients you need on the battlefield, you need the same thing in a marriage. So what do you need on the battlefield? Iman. Because if you don't have Iman, you'll run away from the battlefield. You need Iman in your marriage. If you don't have Iman, you will have a lot of divorces. You need sabr, patience on the battlefield. If you don't have patience, you will give up. Likewise, in the marriage, you need patience. If you don't have patience, you will not succeed. You need knowledge when you're on the battlefield, strategies of war, how to trap the Kafirs, how to trick them, trap them, how to shoot the gun, how to drive the tank, how to fly the plane. You need knowledge on the battlefield. You have to be trained before you go to battle. Likewise, in a marriage, you need knowledge. If you're jahil, when you have problems, you will apply jahiliyyah. This is why many people, when they are in a marriage and they have problems, they apply jahiliyyah. They go back to jahiliyyah. They get angry and they start to use F words to their wives. They apply the system of jahiliyyah in their marriage because they are jahil. They do not have any knowledge. Also, you need wealth for jihad. You have to buy your weapons. You need wealth to take care of your wife in a marriage. You need obedience on the battlefield. You have to obey your amir when you are in the jihad. And in the marriage, you need obedience. The woman has to obey her husband, who is the amir in that house. You need cooperation on the battlefield. You have to cooperate with each other and help each other. Likewise, in a marriage, you have to cooperate. You cannot leave all the burden on one person. If you are selfish, you will not have a marriage. So all the ingredients that you need on the battlefield, you need these same ingredients in a marriage. Marriage is amana, a trust. So these women, the Prophet said in the farewell pilgrimage, were entrusted to you. Allah Ta'ala has entrusted them to you. So if you take care of your wives, you have passed the test. But if you abuse your wife, then you have failed your test miserably. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you are those who behave best towards their wives. The best of you are those who behave best towards their wives. So if you treat your wife good by giving her her rights, you were oppressive and tyrannical, you give your wife her rights, and vice versa, then you have fulfilled the trust. You did not break that trust. But if you were oppressive and tyrannical to your wives by not giving them their rights, then you have failed miserably that trust. Whenever you get married, you are reviving the sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he said, verily I fast, some days I don't fast, Some nights I stay up and pray, some nights I go to bed and I marry women. Any one of you who abstain from my sunnah of marrying women, such a person is not of me. And the Prophet said, what I love best in this dunya are three things: perfume, woman, and salah. Perfume, woman, and salah. Your marriage means stability. Psychological stability, social stability, mental stability, and financial stability. Stability for yourself, your wife, as well as your children. So men who are not married, they are unstable in their mentality, unstable in their behavior, unstable in their thinking. Children who are from broken homes, they are unstable. So they are underachievers. They cannot perform well at school. Children who are from homes where the mother and father, they are fighting each other, throwing things at each other, swearing at each other. When they are at school, in the classroom, their body is in the class, but their mind is not there, because the child is mentally destroyed, a psychological wreck. A stable marriage means that you are stable. You, the wife, is stable, you, the man, is stable, and the children are stable. Number 21. Your marriage gives you confidence. So maybe the man was assuming, oh, look at me, I thought I looked like the Incredible Hulk, but at least she accepted my proposal. So when you find somebody to accept your proposal and marry you, it gives you confidence. So your marriage is confidence. In order for a marriage to be successful, you need the following 6 foundations. Foundation number 1, Islam. The more Islam you have in the home, the less fitna you have in the home. The less Islam you have in the home, the more problems you have in the home between yourself and your wife. So if you want to have a trouble-free marriage, and there is no such thing, but you have to try, because the Prophet had problems in his marriage. If you want to have a trouble-free marriage, you have to apply Islam in the home. And you, the man, you are the Amir, and that home is your Islamic state. That's your Islamic state. You are the Amir, and you have to apply the Sharia in your home. The second ingredient for a successful marriage, the second foundation is called taqwa. So you, the man, you shouldn't fear your wife, and you, the woman, you shouldn't fear your husband, but the both of you should fear Allah. Because if a man wants to cheat on his wife, nobody can stop him. Nobody. The only thing can stop him is the fear of Allah. Because regardless of how much you are a good observer and watcher, you watch and keep and monitor, you cannot be with the person 24 hours a day, every day. So it doesn't make sense you tell the person, look, I'm watching you, never you slip. If you slip, I'm going to divorce you. The fear of a human being cannot stop a human being from doing haram. The only thing that can stop a human being from doing haram is taqwa, the fear of Allah Ta'ala. And you, the Muslim man, you can't cheat on your wife, really, because on Judgment Day, this is the scale, your scale. The zina which you commit will be placed on your scale, not on your wife's scale. So you only cheated on yourself. So you need taqwa to have a successful marriage. The third is called patience, sabr. So Allah said, وَاسْتَعِينَ بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. Seek help in patience and prayer, and verily this is extremely difficult except for those who keep a lowly spirit. The fourth foundation of a successful marriage is called love. So you're not allowed, you shouldn't marry a person unless you love the person. There are many people who marry people who they don't love. And they said to themselves, I don't love her or I don't love him, but let me give it a try. Maybe the love will come later. This is gambling. And gambling is haram in Islam. What's the evidence that you are supposed to marry somebody who you love? Surah Nisa verse 3. فَانْكِحُوا مَا تَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Marry women who are pleasing to you. The Arabic word taba. Ibn Kathir said raghiba, woman who you like, woman who you fancy, woman who you are attracted. Therefore, you are not supposed to marry someone unless you are physically attracted to that someone. Because the purpose of marriage is for you to lower your gaze. So what's the point in marrying to a person who you do not feel physical attraction for, and when you go to the masjid, you look at people lustfully. You look at the wives of your brothers lustfully. Because the wife you have at home, you are not physically attracted to her. So if you know that you're attracted to black women, marry that. White women, marry white women. Arab women, you marry Arab women. Chinese women, you marry Chinese women. Asian women, you marry Asian women. Marry the women who you're attracted to. Don't marry women who you're not physically attracted to, and then go to the masjid and look at the wives of your Muslim brothers lustfully. Because Allah said clearly in Surah Nisa verse 3, فَانْكِحُوا مَا تَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Marry women who are pleasing to you, women of your choice. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf, when he intended to get married, the Prophet said, did you look at her? The Prophet said to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, go and look at her. Because the women of Medina, some of them have a defect in their eyes. So the Rasul commanded Abdurrahman ibn Auf to go and look at her. And when Omar asked for Ali's daughter in marriage, Ali said, I'm going to send her to you, and if you like her, she's yours. And when she came, Omar lift up her dress and look at her leg to see if he liked what he's seen. And she said to Omar, if you were not Amir al-Mu'mineen, I would slap you across the face. So Omar didn't just marry, he lift up her dress and look at her leg to see if he likes what he's looking at. So you're supposed to look at her and you marry her if you like what you see. So this is the advice of Allah Ta'ala, the commandment of Allah Ta'ala. So the fourth foundation of a successful marriage is love. And the Rasul said, تَزَوَّجُوا الْوَدُودَ الْوَلُودَ فَإِنِّي مُكَاثِرٌ بِكُمُ الْأُمَمَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Marry women who are loving and affectionate to their husbands. Women who can give birth, because it is by these women I will compete with the other prophets on Judgment Day to have the most followers. So if you don't love your wife, you will not have a lot of children. So you can help the prophet to compete with the other prophets. The fifth foundation is called mercy. And Allah said in Baqarah 228, وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. Men are a degree above women. And the scholars explain this to mean you are a degree above women, meaning you are merciful towards women. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Istawsu bin nisa khayra, fa innaha khuliqat min dila." Be kind and gentle towards women, because women were created from the rib, which is the upper rib, the most crooked of ribs. So if you try to straighten her out, you are going to break her. But if you leave her and be kind and gentle with her, you will achieve maximum benefit from her. So you need mercy in your marriage. And if you try to straighten her out fully, you will break her. And the Prophet said to break her means to divorce her. That which breaks a woman is divorce. The sixth foundation of a successful marriage is called cooperation and unselfishness. Cooperation and unselfishness. So in a marriage, you're not supposed to leave all the burden on one person. You are supposed to share the burden of the marriage. And even though a woman's money is her money, if the woman is earning just like the man, it's not good for her to keep her money to herself and have him paying all the bills. That is called selfishness. She should share the burden of the marriage and help him to pay one or two of the bills. This is my personal opinion, and maybe some of the brothers, some of the sisters will disagree. So my money is my money, let him shoulder all the responsibilities. No man will tolerate this in any marriage whatsoever. There's no man on the heavens that will tolerate this unless he himself is extremely rich and he doesn't need her to help. Also, there is no such thing as a woman's job. So if the baby needs to be changed, the diaper, you should change it. And you should cook sometimes and wash and clean. there is nothing wrong in doing this, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to do household work at times. But that doesn't mean that the woman should have the man doing this every day, because it can be considered as an affront to his masculinity and his integrity. We will now go to another chapter, and that is the rights of the women over their husbands. The rights of the women over their husbands are very important, because Allah said in Surah Baqarah 228, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Women have the same amount of rights over you as you have over them. Ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, used to dress up for his wife. And when they asked him, why are you dressing up for your wife? He said, because Allah said in Baqarah 228 that the women have the same rights over you as you have over them. So the same way you like your wife to dress up for you, you should dress up for them. So this is why Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu used to dress up for his wife. The rights of the women are food, clothing, shelter, and to take her to the doctor whenever she becomes sick. The evidence to prove that you have to feed your wife can be found in Surah 4, verse 34, Nisa 34, in which Allah said, Ar-Rijal Qawwamuna ala Nisa. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women. And whenever you do not maintain your wife, she doesn't have to go to bed with you. You have lost your right. And whenever a woman refuses to go to bed with you, the man, you don't have to maintain her. I hope that's clear. So if she refuses to go to bed with you, you don't have to maintain her. And if you, the man, didn't maintain your wife, she doesn't have to cohabit with you. Another right, you're not allowed to abuse her verbally and physically and then cohabit with her. The evidence that you're not allowed to abuse her physically and then cohabit with her can be found in Bukhari, volume 7, page 100. Another right is that you have to cohabit with her at least once every 4 days. Once every 4 days. So if you cohabit with her on a Sunday, you have to cohabit with her Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, on the Thursday. Am I calculated properly? What's the evidence? When Omar was the caliph, a woman went to Omar and complained, my husband, he's always staying up at night for the whole night and praying. And I'm not getting enough of him. So she went to Omar and complained, and she was sitting down there, and Omar called the man, come to me. And Omar told the man what the woman is saying, that you are staying up a lot of the nights and pray tahajjud for the whole night. What did the man say to Omar? The man said, Allah gave me the permission to marry 4 women. I only have 1 wife. So those other 3 nights, which I don't have women to go to, I use it for my tahajjud. When Omar heard that, he couldn't refute it. So what Omar did, Omar said, okay, you have to go to bed with her once every 4 nights. So because of that, he passed a law in the Islamic State that you have to cohabit with your wives once every 4 nights. And the woman has a right to call you to bed when it's her turn, and you cannot refuse if it is once every 4 nights. So if you cohabit with her on a Sunday, and she calls you to bed on the Thursday, you have to go. What's our evidence? The same incident which I've just quoted with Omar radiallahu anhu and the man, the Sahabi, who was staying up most nights and praying. And another right of the woman, you are not allowed to abuse her physically or verbally so that she will ask for a khula, a divorce. Because khula means the woman divorcing you. So if the woman is divorcing you, she has to give you back the dowry. So if you give her, for example, 10,000 pounds as dowry, and you said, I want back my money, so let me treat her bad. And you treat her bad for her to ask for a divorce, and then you said, okay, you want the divorce, I have to give back my money. This is not allowed in Al-Islam. So if you treat her bad for her to ask for a khula, so that you can get back your money. You're not supposed to get back your money because you are playing with the deen. You are abusing the laws of Allah Ta'ala. Another right of the woman, you're not allowed to prevent her from visiting her family members unless her family members, meaning her mother and father, they are enemies of Al-Islam. If they are enemies of Islam, then you can prevent her from visiting them. But if they are not enemies of Islam, they didn't attack Islam with their tongue or their hands, then you cannot prevent her from visiting them. Another right of the woman, you have to provide for her off-time activities. So the Prophet ﷺ used to provide for his wives off-time activities, and he used to play with them. So on one occasion he had a race with Aisha and she won the race. But when she became older and fatter, the Prophet had another race with her and the Prophet won the race, and then the Prophet said, "This victory of man cancelled your victory that came before." And the Prophet used to provide off-time activities for his wife to the extent where on one occasion Aisha radiallahu anha got lost. Where did she get lost? On the battlefield. So he used to take them even to jihad. He never leave them in the home to rot like these brothers nowadays. They leave their wives in the house 24 hours a day, every day. And they wouldn't even take their wives to a restaurant. They live with their wives like the Stone Age period. Medieval, very medieval. They wouldn't even take their wives to a restaurant and have a meal. They are bakhil, stingy, and mean. So they don't provide any sort of activities whatsoever, not even to take her out to have her having some fresh air, fresh oxygen. And having her in the house suffering from mental depression and becoming a psychological wreck. So are you more pious than the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet used to take his wives out, so much so that on one occasion he took Aisha on the battlefield at Banu Mustalik. You're not allowed to hit her in the face, another right. Another right, you are not allowed to hit her until you exhaust the two first methods. And that is, if she is disobedient, you admonish her with kind words. That's the first step. The second step, you stay away from the bed. Or if you sleep in the same bed, you turn your back to her. That's the second step. The third step, you beat her lightly. You beat her lightly with a miswak below her knees. These are the steps that you are supposed to take. And if she disobeys, you pronounce one divorce. And before you pronounce a divorce, you call arbitrators. Somebody from her family, somebody from your family, to bring you back together and to sort out your marriage. And if the arbitration failed, you pronounce one divorce. But as for Muslims who say to their wives, "I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you," they are jahil. And this is bid'ah. A man did it in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he became so upset, his complexion became red. And he said, "Why are you playing with the book of Allah even though I'm in your midst?" And a man said, "O Messenger of Allah, shall I chop off his head?" Why? Because he said to his wife, "I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you." This is not allowed in Islam. You have to say to the woman, "I divorce you" once, and you can't say, "I divorce you" if she is menstruating. You can pronounce divorce if she is pregnant, but you are not allowed to pronounce divorce if she is menstruating. And when you pronounce divorce once, she should wait for 3 months, and you have to live in the same house with her during those 3 months. It's called iddah. And you have to feed her. And if you cohabit with her, you break your iddah, so you take her back. So if you want to divorce her, you have to pronounce another divorce. And if you pronounce another divorce, you have 2 divorces. So even though you break your iddah, the divorce is still counted. And if you pronounce a 3rd divorce, then you can take her back. You are not allowed to take her back. And if it is the 3rd divorce, you are not compelled to feed her during those 3 months of waiting. And if you pronounce divorce when she is pregnant, then she has to wait until she delivers her child. The iddah is her 9 months of pregnancy. That is the iddah of the pregnant woman. As for the man's right, total obedience. So a woman is not allowed to disobey her husband, because the Prophet ﷺ forbade that a woman should disobey her husband. And he said, any woman who prays 5 times a day, fasts in the holy month of Ramadan, and obeys her husband will enter paradise through any gate she lacks. Any woman who her husband calls her to bed and she refuses to go to bed with him, all the angels in heaven curses that woman until she obeys. This hadith is found in Bukhari volume 7, page 93. So all the fishes in the sea and the birds in the air, all the angels in heaven curse that woman until she obeys her husband. So women who, whenever their husband calls them to bed, they said, I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood. These women are westernized and they are behaving like Kafir women, and these women are cursed, and on many occasions brothers complain to me about women behaving like this, and when I tell the woman the hadith, she doesn't care about the hadith. She laughs at the hadith. These women, they are hypocrites. And whenever you have such women, you should divorce them, because the Prophet said 3 men, Allah will never answer their dua. A man who borrows money from his Muslim brothers with the intention not to pay it back. Secondly, a man who has an evil wife, like this woman I'm describing to you, and he refuses to divorce her. And the third, a man who eats haram food. These 3 men, Allah will never answer their dua. Any woman, whenever she dies, and at the time when she was going inside the grave, her husband was happy with her, that woman will be in the paradise. The other right, you are not allowed to prefer anyone over your husband. Because the hadith is clear. If it were halal for a human being to bow down to another human being, I would have commanded the women to bow down to their husbands. I would have commanded the women to bow down to their husbands. You are not allowed to invite, another right, you are not allowed to invite any man to the home who your husband dislikes, or any woman. You are not allowed to invite anyone to the home who your husband dislikes, and you are not allowed to associate and keep them as your friends, because if your husband doesn't like them, you are not allowed to have them for your friends. You are not allowed to leave the home without your husband's permission. As for these women who are living in this society, they have a problem with their husbands. Instead of staying inside the house and sort out the problem properly, they ring up a cab, pack their bags, jump in the cab, leave the home, and the husband doesn't have a clue where they are going, who they are with, what were they doing. These women are westernized. They may have a hijab, they wear a hijab, and they appear to be Muslim women on the outside, but inside here, inside their head, is a Kafir British mentality, or a Kafir American mentality, a Kafir African mentality, a Kafir Afro-Caribbean mentality, a Kafir Asian mentality, and so on and so forth. They are not Islamized. They need to be Islamized. So she's not allowed to leave the home without her husband's permission. She's not allowed to lend out his belongings behind his back without his permission. These are the rights of the wife over the husband, and the rights of the husband over the wife. And I pray Allah that you'll be able to give each other their rights, because you are human beings. You are not perfect, so you are bound to make mistakes, and you are bound to overlook the rights of each other at times. So in order for your marriage to be successful, you need to be patient and forgiving and merciful towards each other, because you are not perfect. You cannot give each other their rights 100%. As for the conditions of marriage, in order for the marriage to be sahih, accepted by Allah, there are 4. The first is 2 witnesses. And the 2 witnesses for your marriage have to be people who pray 5 times a day. So the witnesses are 2 men or 4 women. The second condition is a wali, because the Prophet said, "Ayu imra'atin nakahat bighayri idhni waliha, fanikahuha batil, fanikahuha batil, fanikahuha batil." Any woman who gets married without the permission of her wali, her marriage is batil, nullified. Her marriage is batil, nullified. Her marriage is batil, nullified. And the Prophet used the word batil 3 times. And according to the Jamhur, Malik, Shafi, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a woman needs a wali at all times, whether she's divorced or she's a virgin. She needs a wali. But according to Abu Hanifa, if she's a divorced woman, she doesn't need a wali. She can marry herself. So when we say to Abu Hanifa, the Prophet said, any woman who gets married without the permission of her wali, her marriage is batil, nullified. Abu Hanifa said, you don't understand the hadith, it means the slave girl. But as for the free woman, she can marry herself, because she can use her wealth the way she wants. The correct opinion is the Jamhur. The Arabic word Jamhur means majority. Jamhur means majority. The correct opinion is the Jamhur that a woman at all times she needs a wali, whether she's divorced or she's a virgin, because No woman is an expert in checking up on the character of a man because she doesn't live with the man before marrying to her like the Kafir woman. She's not allowed to live with him before marrying to him. The Kafir woman, they live with him to see, let me check on his character, and if after 5 years he's okay, then I marry him. This is not the case. So a Muslim woman needs a wali at all times, whether she's divorced or she's a virgin. The third condition for the marriage to be accepted is the mahar, the sadaq, the dowry. And the Prophet said, "Akthar nisa barakatan aqalluhunna sadaqa." The best of women are those who ask for a little mahar, sadaq, dowry. And there are countries today in which the dowry system is abused. And there are some women who, if you should ever approach them and propose to them, they will tell you that I want a Ferrari car as my dowry, or a house in Hampstead Heath. But the hadith is clear that the best of women are those who ask for a little dowry. And as I said before, there are many countries in which the dowry system is abused. For example, in Pakistan, the dowry system is abused because they mix their dowry system with Hinduism, and that is the woman gives the dowry to the man. This is Hinduism, this is not Islam. In Saudi Arabia, the dowry system is abused because the father, he's asking for approximately 20 pounds sterling, 30,000 US dollars. This is just the dowry, and he doesn't give it to his daughter, he keeps it. So when you ask him, why don't you give it to the daughter? He's selling his daughter the way you sell camel. A camel. And when you ask him, why don't you give it to the daughter, it's her dowry. He says, I have to hold on to it because if she should get a divorce, I'm going to be the one to feed her. So this is my security. So this dowry system is abused, and he's lying, he's selling his daughter. And sometimes these men, they're asking for so much money. The women, they stay in their house until they're 35, 40 years old, and they're still virgins. No man can afford them. And it's not just in Saudi Arabia that it's happening in Somalia as well, and in the Sudan, and in the Gulf, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and many other places. They sell their daughters. So the dowry system is abused in many Muslim countries. The fourth condition for the marriage to be accepted is rida az-zawjayn. Both parties should be pleased. The man should agree to marry the woman, and the woman should agree to marry the man. So the Prophet ﷺ said, a matron, a woman who was previously married, should not be given in marriage except after consulting her. And a virgin should not be given in marriage except after her permission was given. She has to give you her permission before you can marry her to a man. Who? The virgin. The people ask, O Messenger of Allah, O Apostle of Allah, how can we know the permission of the virgin? Because she's shy. He said, her silence indicates her permission. Her silence indicates her permission. Volume 7 of Bukhari, page 52. So these Muslim parents who are forcing their daughters into marriages to men who they don't want to marry, the marriage is batil, nullified. Now, that's a strong statement that the marriage is batil. So I have to provide you with an evidence that the marriage is batil. The evidence is Khansa bint Khidam, a girl by the name of Khansa bint Khidam, was forced into marriage by her father to a man who she doesn't like. She went to the Prophet and complained, and the Prophet annulled her marriage. The Prophet ﷺ has invalidated her marriage, and the evidence can be found in Bukhari, volume 7, page 53. The Nuna chapter, proposing to a woman. You may propose to a girl through her wali, her father, that is, or if she doesn't have her father, her brother, her uncle, and if she's a sister who embraced Islam, her father, who's a Kafir, can't be her wali, so she has to appoint a Muslim brother to be her wali. You may propose through her wali, or you may propose by the telephone, or you may see her at the masjid and ask her for her hand in marriage. This may be strange, but I reiterated the point. You may approach a woman directly in front of her face and ask her for her hand in marriage, and vice versa. The evidence for this can be found in the hadith which I've quoted to you earlier on, that the woman came and proposed to the Prophet ﷺ. The woman came and looked in the face of the Prophet and proposed to the Prophet. So the scholars of Islam agree unanimously among themselves that sisters can propose to brothers. A sister can see you and propose to you. She doesn't have to go through anyone. She can see you and propose to you, and you can also see a sister and propose to her based upon the evidence which I have just quoted to you. And this is ijma among the scholars. No scholar disagreed that direct proposals are not allowed. All the scholars agree that direct proposals are allowed. The only women that you can propose to are women who you are allowed to marry to. And the women you are allowed to marry to are 3: Muslims, Jews, and Christians. However, you are not allowed to marry a Jewish girl or a Christian girl unless Muslim girls are not available. So you are allowed to marry Jewish girls and Christian girls if there are no Muslim girls available. Because when Umar was a caliph, a man married to a Jewish girl and he wrote him a letter and said, divorce her. He wrote back Umar a letter and said, why should I divorce her? Allah gave me the permission in Surah Ma'idah to marry her. Umar wrote him a second letter. When you, the Muslim men, marry kafir women, who will marry to the Muslim girls? And then he divorced her. Also, you're not allowed to propose to a girl who your Muslim brother proposed to. Now, what if your Muslim brother proposed to a girl and she says to him, give me some time to think about it, and she's wavering? Are you allowed to propose to the same girl? No. What do you think? She's wavering. She's not sure. Can you propose to the same girl? According to the Jamhur, what does the Arabic word Jamhur means? Majority of the scholars. According to the Jamhur, and that is Malik, Shafi, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, if the girl is wavering, you can propose to her. And they quote a hadith. The hadith is, when Fatima bin Qais was divorced from her husband, Abu Amr ibn Hafs, Abu Jahm proposed to her. And Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan proposed to her. So she came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, Abu Jahm proposed to me and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan proposed to me. What should I do? The Prophet said, as for Abu Jahm, he's a wife beater. And as for Muawiyah, he's a time waster, a loafer. So marry Usama. The girl said, Usama? She was surprised because Usama was the son of a freed slave. But as for Muawiyah and Abu Jahm, they were the notables of Quraysh, the elite of Quraysh. So for the Prophet to ask her to marry Usama, it was strange to her because he was the son of a freed slave, but she married to Usama. She agreed and she married to Usama as the Prophet had requested. So Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal said the girl was wavering, the woman was wavering, and because she was wavering, the Prophet said, marry Usama. According to Abu Hanifa, if you propose to a girl and she says to you, give me some time to think about it, she's wavering, you are not allowed to propose to that girl. Abu Hanifa said it is haram. Which one of these two opinions do you prefer? Which one is more accurate? Huh? The most accurate opinion, brothers, is that of Abu Hanifa. You may be wondering how comes Abu Hanifa is the most accurate. Because the Jamhur says the opposite. You have to understand that in Islam we are not Democrats. Are we Democrats? Do we go along with democracy? Do we go along with the majority or we go along with evidence? Evidence. That's why we don't support the Jamhur. We go along with Abu Hanifa because we're not Democrats. We don't have a show of hands and give the seat the majority. The reason why Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the reason why they are wrong to say that you can propose to the girl if she's wavering is because when the Prophet ﷺ said to Fatima bin Qais, marry Usama, Muawiyah is a time waster, a loafer. Abu Jahm is a wife beater, so marry Usama. The reason why the Prophet said marry Usama is because the Prophet did not want enmity and hatred to crop up between Muawiyah and Abu Jahm. Is that clear? The Prophet did not want enmity. The Prophet wanted to nip the enmity in the bud. He didn't want enmity and hatred to crop up between Muawiyah and Abu Jahm. So he said to Fatima bin Qais, marry Usama. But you are not allowed to propose to a woman if she's wavering. Abu Hanifa said it's natural for her to waver. What did Abu Hanifa say? It's natural for her to waver. Because if you ask a woman to marry you, you're telling her to spend the rest of your life with you. Is it a simple decision or a major decision? A major decision. So Abu Hanifa said it's natural for her to think about it. Also, she has to perform Salat al-Istikhara to see if Allah is going to make it easy for her. She has to perform Salat al-Istikhara. So Abu Hanifa said, since it's a major decision, it's natural for her to waver. This is why you're not allowed to propose to her while your brother proposed to her and she's thinking about it. So the most accurate opinion, brothers, is that of Abu Hanifa and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Malik and Shafi. They are wrong when they said you can propose to the girl even though she's wavering. What are the qualities you are supposed to look forward to whenever you want to marry someone? Deen. Quality number one, deen. Therefore, you, the Muslim woman, before you marry to a man, you should ask yourself a very important question. Would I like that man to be the father of my children? You have to ask yourself a question. You, the Muslim man, you ask yourself the question. Would I like that man to be the father of my children? And you, the man, would I like that woman to be the mother of my children? So whenever you want to get married, you don't look at the immediate pleasure. You marry just for pleasures of the flesh. You look at the future of your progeny, your children. So you choose someone who is pious. So you, the Muslim woman, should choose somebody who is pious. Because you're so vulnerable. Women are so vulnerable. So it's very important that you choose a pious husband. And you, the man, you should choose a pious woman. And the Prophet said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْخُضْرَاءَ الدِّمَمْ. Beware of crops, beautiful crops that grew up with bad fertilizer. Look at the beauty of this speech. What the Prophet said, beware of beautiful crops that germinate and grew with bad fertilizers. The Sahabas couldn't understand the hadith. They said, what do you mean, O Messenger of Allah? Beautiful women who grew up in corrupted environments. So can you imagine you go to a place like Brazil, where most of the women are beautiful there, maybe 99%. And then you marry a woman who took her shahada, and she's in her 30s or 20s. And you quickly marry her, cohabit with her, and you didn't do any AIDS test. So the moment you cohabit, it's better you go to the shop and order your coffin. Moment you marry, second step, you go to what the place name, the funeral home, and order your coffin. Never you marry a person coming out of Jahiliyyah without an AIDS test. What's that? And it's the same for the Muslim woman. You Muslim woman, never you marry a man coming out of Jahiliyyah until he gives you the AIDS test result. And this country, they are so evil. I heard that they don't give you the result on paper, they just tell you. So maybe the person come back and said, oh, I'm not HIV positive, I'm negative. And the person is positive. So in this country, they don't write it down and tell you. Is that so? I don't know. I've never done an AIDS test in this country. So you have to practice fiqh al-waqi'. Not because a person takes his or her shahada, that doesn't mean that the shahada wipes out the AIDS virus which is in the person's body. The shahada doesn't wipe out the AIDS virus. So you have to do what the Prophet commanded you. Beware of beautiful crops that germinate with bad fertilizer. What does that mean? Beautiful women who grew up in evil and corrupted environments. The second quality you're looking forward to, your partner should not be barren. Your partner should not be barren. So the woman should not be barren, and the scholars say that you know if she's barren by looking at her mother and grandmother. If they can have children, then she will be able to have children. And you, the Muslim woman, you should marry men who are barren as well. This is sterile. Sterile for the men, barren for the woman. It's makruh to marry these people because a man had wanted to marry a beautiful woman who was barren, and the Prophet forbade him. And then he said, marry women who are loving and affectionate, who can have children. Because it is by these women that compete with the other prophets to have the most followers on Judgment Day. Number 3, you should marry a person who did not sleep around. Because when people sleep around, they become psychologically destroyed. Do you know what happened to people who sleep around? They cannot have a bond. They cannot form bonds. So when you marry them, they just see you as another person passing through. Because they were psychologically destroyed. So promiscuity destroys people psychologically. So it's always better for you to marry people who didn't sleep around, the scholars say. Because the moment a person has 3, 4, 5, 10 partners, when you marry them, they see you, you're just another partner. I can always dump you. They can't value you. Because promiscuity destroys them psychologically. The 4th, marry people who are from a home that has deen inside of it. A home which is famous for deen. So don't marry a person whose father owns a brothel, a pornographic shop, an off-license, a pub, a disco. Don't marry people like these. People, the home is famous for being an evil home. That person, his or her father is a drugs pusher. Marry people whose home are famous for having deen inside of it. Marry people who you are physically attracted to. This is the 6th quality. Don't marry people who, whenever you look at them, your heart doesn't feel tranquil, your soul doesn't feel tranquil. Because if you marry a person who you're not attracted to, you're going to end up becoming attracted to people who you're not married to. Other women, other men. So you should marry somebody, whenever you look at them, your heart feels tranquil and your soul feels tranquil, because one of the purpose of marriage is for you to lower your gaze. The 7th and last, marry somebody who is a stranger, meaning somebody who's not your cousin. And the more stranger person is better. So whenever a person is white and they marry somebody who's black, or a black person marrying a white person, you'll find that the zeal and enthusiasm to go to bed with each other is stronger than if you get married to another black person or another white person. And if you marry to a person who has the same features like you, the same eyes, same hair, same skin color, the zeal of making love to that person is very, very little. But if you get married to somebody who looks different, because it's like you're in bed with your sister or your brother. But if you get married to a person who looks different from you, then the zeal for making love to the person will be strong. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, he got Maryam the Coptic pregnant, and he was married to Aisha for 9 years, and he couldn't get her pregnant. He didn't get her pregnant. The stranger the woman look, the farther she's away from you in appearance and looks, features, the more exciting your marriage is. So the scholars of Islam say you should marry women who are far from you. Don't marry your cousins, because it will cause physical defects and the children will turn out to be mad sometimes and crazy. So don't marry your cousins, the blood is too close. Marry women who are far. The farther it is, the wiser the children are born. And a man came to the Prophet and he sought permission to marry his cousin. The Prophet said, marry another woman. Don't marry a woman who is your cousin, marry somebody else. The other chapter. So these are the 7 qualities you should look forward to in a woman. And another reason why you shouldn't marry your cousin is because whenever you marry your cousin, it's difficult to divorce her if she's disobedient. Because if she's your cousin, you will say, how can I divorce her? She's my cousin. I'm going to offend my aunt or my uncle. You will calculate. I will offend my aunt or my uncle, and it will create problems in the family structure, my clan. So I can't divorce her even though she's rebellious and disobedient. So this is one of the reasons why it's not good to marry your cousin. It's halal, but it's not recommended. Other chapter, looking at women. You are commanded to look at women before you marry to them, and Imam Shafi said you should look at the woman, then propose to her. But as for proposing to the woman, then look at her, this is not what it is. Imam Shafi said, the scholars differ. Some scholars say You propose, then you look at her. Imam Shafi said, no, it's the opposite. You look at her, then you propose to her. And this is the accurate opinion, because you may propose to a woman, and when you look at her, you say, I'm sorry, I'm not pleased. you don't tickle my fancy. So what have you done? You have offended her. You have offended her because you proposed to her, and when you saw her face, you said, oh, I'm sorry. So this is why the opinion of Imam Shafi is better. You look at her, and when you are happy with what you see, then you propose to her. Now, when the Prophet said, look at her, to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, what does it mean? Some scholars said you should look at her face and the palm of her hands. Her face and the palm of her hands. And you can send your mother or your sister to look at her, or you can look at her yourself, because the Prophet proposed to a girl, and he sent another woman to look at her, and the Prophet said, look at her legs and look at her mouth. Maybe the Prophet didn't want to marry anybody with rotten teeth. So the Prophet said, look at her mouth and look at her legs. So this is one way of looking at her. The other way, you can look at her yourself, and this is the better way. You know why? You may send your sister to look at her, and your sister came back and said, oh, she's a one-off, she's so beautiful. And when you saw her, you said, my goodness, what have I fallen into? Do you know why? Because beauty is relative. So what your sister may consider to be beautiful, you may not consider that to be beautiful, because beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So the best thing is for you to look at her yourself, because you know best what you are looking for. And when Omar proposed to Ali's daughter, he didn't send somebody to look at her. He went himself and lifted up her dress and looked at her leg. Omar did that. And her name was Kulthum. So the best thing is for you to look at her yourself. So the scholar said, look at her, meaning her face and her hands. Ahmad ibn Hanbal said to look at her, meaning her hair. You should look at her hair, and she should be in a dress that reaches her knees. So in the Sudan, for example, when you propose to a girl, she serves you tea, and she comes in the room without any hijab and a dress to her knees, so you can look at her. And the most accurate opinion is that of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, because maybe you may marry a girl thinking that she has long hair. When she goes home, you marry somebody with a bald head. So you demand, but you want back your money. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a man married a woman, and he gave the dowry, and when he went behind closed doors with her, he came back out, I want back my money. He saw something he didn't like. Well, if he had looked at her before this, he wouldn't have fallen into this problem. And the Prophet said, you can't get back your money. So once you go behind closed doors with a woman and lock the door, you cannot get back your dowry, because you went into seclusion with her. So once again, you realize that the opinion of Ahmad ibn Hanbal is correct, that you should look at her hair and address to her knees. But if you look at her face and hands, and then you ask her sister, do you have long hair or short hair? And she said, I have long hair. And then you look at her brother, oh, look at the texture of his hair. You say, okay, I assume that her hair looks like the hair of her brother, same mother, same father. Then there's no need for you to look at her hair. You can ask her, do you have long hair? And you don't have to put her through the embarrassment of looking at her hair, because virgins don't want people to see their hair. The third opinion, you should look at her, and this opinion you should not quote it. It's a wrong opinion, and it's a dangerous opinion. The third opinion is that of Dawood al-Zahiri, the man who Ahmad ibn Hanbal kicked out of the history circle. He said you should look at her naked when she's bathing in the bathroom. And this opinion is wrong. And he said when the Prophet said look at her, the word her, H-E-R, her, means the whole of the woman. Not just her head or her hand, but the whole of the woman. This opinion is wrong, and Dawood al-Zahiri, he made a mistake. He was a great scholar, but he has many mistakes, because he paid attention to the external aspect of the text. So when the Prophet said, if a woman asks her husband for a divorce without a valid reason, she will not smell the fragrance of paradise, Dawood al-Zahiri said she will enter paradise, but when she's in paradise, she won't smell the fragrance. And when Allah said, don't say oof to your parents, don't even say oof to your parents. Your common sense tells you, If you can say oof to your parents, that means you can beat your parents. Dawud al-Zahiri said, you can beat your parents, but when you're beating them, don't say oof. So this is the problem when people pay attention to the external aspect of the text. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal's opinion is the most accurate, that you can see her here. If you propose to a girl and you see her here, you didn't do anything wrong. The last chapter, haram marriages. The first haram marriage is called mut'ah. And the Prophet Ali ibn Abi Talib said the Prophet forbade the eating of donkey meat and mut'ah, temporary marriage, at the Battle of Khaybar. This hadith is in Bukhari, volume 7, page 36. So mut'ah is temporary marriage, and that is you marry a girl and you get your marriage certificate. The Imam gives you a marriage certificate, and then your marriage certificate expires like your MOT expires. So you can marry her for 24 hours, you can marry her for 2 days, you can marry her for a week, and the purpose of the marriage is for pleasure, pleasures of the flesh. This is why it is called mut'ah. The Arabic word mut'ah means pleasure. It is haram, the Prophet forbade it at the Battle of Khaybar. Also, nikah al-shighar is haram, and that is, you have a sister, your Muslim brother has a sister. Or you have a daughter, your Muslim brother has a daughter. So I said to you, I will give you my daughter in marriage, and you give me your daughter, and we will not ask each other for dowry. This marriage is haram because you oppressed the women, you did not give them their dowry. This is called al-shighar. The marriage is called al-shighar. The third haram marriage is called muhallil, and that is, you pronounce divorce on your wife 3 times. So can you go back to her? What do you think? No, you cannot. You're not sure. I just explained divorce to you. If you pronounce 3 divorces on your wife, it's the 3rd divorce, you cannot go back to her. When I say 3 divorces, 3 different sittings, because if you say I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, the Prophet counted it as 1 divorce, because it's 1 sitting. I'm speaking 3 different sittings. If you divorce your wife 3 times, you cannot go back to her unless a Muslim brother marries her and cohabits with her. So people who divorce their wives 3 times, what do? They approach brothers and pay them to marry their wives, cohabit with her. Then divorce her so that he can go back to his wife. The Prophet said this man is a chartered bull. At-tays al-musta'ar. At-tays al-musta'ar, a chartered bull. The 4th haram marriage is to marry 2 sisters and live with them at the same time and cohabit with them at the same time. If you marry a girl and then she died, you can marry the sister. But to marry 2 sisters and live with them at the same time, this is haram. Another haram marriage, the marriage of kafirs to Muslim girls. So you're not allowed to marry your daughters to Jewish men, Christian men. Because in Surah Mumtahina verse 10, Allah said, Muslim girls cannot marry kafir men. You, the Muslim man, you can marry a Christian girl or a Jewish girl, but this is only when Muslim girls are not available to marry. The 6th haram marriage is a marriage of the mushrikeen, and that is whenever a Muslim man marries a Buddhist girl, a Hindu girl, an atheist girl, a Rasta girl, a Sikh girl. Any Muslim man who marries a Hindu girl, a Buddhist girl, a Sikh girl, a Rasta girl, atheist girl, agnostic, he is committing zina because he is married to a mushrik. And you cannot marry mushrikeen in Islam, pagans. Another haram marriage is to marry a prostitute. This is not allowed. However, if the woman used to sleep around and then she makes tawbah, she takes her shahada and makes tawbah, you can marry her, but you have to let her do an AIDS test. And good luck to those who want to marry her. I would never marry such a woman. Because sometimes it doesn't show up. The HIV virus doesn't show up. It's in the body, but it doesn't show up. Is it finished? Okay, the last is to marry an aunt and a niece and have them together, living with them together. You're not allowed. Shota will now invite questions.
Many people need to saying that nowadays, if they want a boy or a girl, you have to reduce the QX or Y knowledge. do something politically and they can choose whether they want to get on the voice. But the hadith, we know, we quote a certain times saying that only the angels know if that exists in Islam, if that baby is going to be a girl or a boy.
Allah said, Ma fil arham, the nature of what's in the mother's womb. I've explained it many times, meaning rich or poor, happy or unhappy, Muslim or kafir, straight or homosexual. Only Allah knows if the child will be rich or poor, happy or unhappy, homosexual or straight. This is the meaning of the ayah. Ma fil arham, the nature of what's in the womb.
It's not girl or boy.
No, it doesn't mean that.
You mentioned marrying a Jewish or Christian girl. That's only if they renounce the shirk. That's correct, isn't it? You can't marry them if they still believe in Trinity or. Is that correct? Or
Yes, you can marry them.
even if they believe in Trinity.
Yes, even if they believe in Trinity. Because that's why they're Catholics, that's why they're Christians, because they believe in Trinity.
I was told by a scholar that they have to renounce their Trinity and say they believe in one God. Even though they may be Christians, they have to renounce their shirk.
That condition, I'm not aware of it. Maybe the scholar means you can only marry Unitarian Christians. But it makes a lot of sense, really, because if they believe in Trinity, they are mushrikeen, they are pagans. So what you said makes a lot of sense. We need to see the tafsir of the ayah. The ayah explains itself, meaning women who didn't sleep around. That's what Allah said. Women who do not take unto themselves sweethearts, consorts. These are the women you can marry. Allah didn't mention those who renounce the Trinity.
No, concerning the same question, can you marry them? Do you have to marry them with the intention that they'll become Muslim, or that they're going to stay Christian or Jew forever? What?
To marry a Christian or a Jewish girl is very, very dangerous. And it's only allowed when there are no Muslim girls available. Because if you do that, then your children are going to become kafirs in front of your very eyes. This is why Omar told the man to divorce his wife. It is said that Muawiyah had a Christian wife. The Caliph Muawiyah had a Christian wife, and I don't know whether or not she embraced Islam. I don't know of any author say that she embraced Islam.
It's
Contraception, temporary contraception is halal, and before you practice contraception, you have to seek the woman's permission. So if you practice coitus interruptus, pull out, that is, withdraw, you need the woman's permission because you are decreasing her pleasure. You are taking away from her pleasure. So you need her permission. Secondly, it's her right to have a child if she wants. If she's a slave girl, then you don't need her permission. Contraception is halal if it is temporary. But if it is permanent contraception, and that is the woman cutting her tubes and tying it, that is totally haram in Islam.
Under what condition can a Muslim allow his daughter to marry a Christian?
I've already told you that in Surah 60 verse 10, Allah said Muslim girls cannot marry Kafir men. And if a Muslim girl should marry a Kafir man, she has apostated from Deen. She has committed the crime of apostasy. So there is absolutely no condition under which a Muslim girl can marry a Christian man. And Warith ad-Din Muhammad in America gave his daughter to a Christian man. That makes him Warith ad-Din Muhammad in America a kafir, because he said it's halal. And any father who gave his daughter to a Christian man and said it's halal, he himself becomes a kafir and the girl becomes a kafir. So there's absolutely no condition. Surah 60 verse 10 tells you it's haram.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but there's been a lot of creations like marriage agencies. You recommend it?
I wouldn't say I recommend marriage agencies. And at the same time, I cannot say they are haram, because Muslims need to get married. If it is properly conducted, I shouldn't say anything wrong with it, because Muslims need to get married. It's just that I'm afraid that people will start getting the phone numbers of others and go on secret dates, and then they become secret lovers and so on and so forth, from one haram to another. This is the danger. But if it is properly conducted with the girl having her wali, I cannot pronounce it haram.
Shit, about people are sterile. Who's supposed to marry them? Because you mean they got needs too, don't they?
Yeah, people who are sterile, they have needs as well. You can marry them as a second wife.
What about if they're a man?
He has to search for a woman who doesn't want to have children. There are women that, don't worry, there are many women who don't want to have children, especially career women. He has to find a woman who doesn't want to have children, because if she wants children, she can divorce him and find a man who can get her pregnant.
Or probably a woman that's previously married and has a big bundle of kids.
Well, you can have a woman who is sterile as barren as a second wife, not as a first wife. To have her as a first wife is makruh, but to have her as a second wife, it's halal.
Where's the hudud for the rapist and child molester?
The rapist is killed in Islam. The rapist is killed in Islam, and the evidence can be found in Surah Ma'idah verse 33. إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا ويصلبوا وتقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف وينفوا من الأرض ذلك هم خزي في الدنيا ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عليم. The punishment for those who spread mischief on the land, the punishment for those who fight against Allah and His Messenger and strive with might and main to spread mischief on the land, is that they should be killed or crucified, or their hands and feet should be cut off from opposite sides, or they should be banished from the land. This is their disgrace in this dunya, and in the hereafter they will have the most humiliating punishment, the most painful punishment. So the ayah said they spread mischief on the land. The scholars of Islam use it to kill people who rape and people who smuggle drugs inside the Islamic State. And the child molester, if the child is his own daughter, he's killed, or his own sister. The child molester is killed, because it's not just child molesting, it's incest. And the child molester, if the act he performed with the child is a homosexual act, he should be killed, because it's not just child molesting, it's an act of homosexuality, and homosexuals are killed anyway. If the child molester, the child was a total stranger to him, but the child died in the act, he is killed. The child molester, if the child was a total stranger to him, and the child didn't die in the act, and it is ascertained that the act he performed with the child was not a homosexual act, it was a normal sexual act, he is given 100 lashes. This is what the Islamic Sharia has to say in regards to child molesting.
If a man divorces the wife and divorces, you know, each of them want to come back together, should they need to do istikhara?
Istikhara. Yes, you should do istikhara. If you divorce a woman and you want to take her back, you should do istikhara.
You said that you can't physically abuse your wife, but last time you said that you asked your teacher, you said, oh, actually, we're going to rape your wife, and he said it's alright.
Yeah, you can. It is halal in Islam for a woman to rape his wife. It's in the hadith. It is halal in Islam for a woman to rape his wife. It's in the hadith. Huh? What did I say?
A woman to rape her wife.
A woman. Right, it's halal for a man to rape his wife. I've given you the hadith. The hadith says a man used to work at night and he used to come home in the daytime, and his wife used to be fasting when he comes home, and he used to break her fast by force, and she complained to the Prophet that every time I'm fasting, my husband breaks my fast by force. And the Prophet didn't forbid him. All the Prophet said is that no woman is allowed to fast nawafil, optional fast, unless she gets the permission of her husband. So the hadith is clear.
But that is physical abuse, isn't it?
No, it's not physical abuse. Physical abuse is when you beat her up and punch her around the house. And raping is not physical abuse. It's his right as well.
Yes, so you mentioned finding a good Muslim wife.
Say it again.
You mentioned finding a good Muslim wife or husband or whatnot. Does that mean find someone who has actually been living in the deen?
I would recommend somebody who grew up in Islam is better, because reverts of today, they're not like the reverts of yesterday. The reverts today, they are always in deviant groups, either Shia or Salafi or some other, or Sufi, some other rubbish group. And when you give some of them even become Qadiani and Dr. York, you know Dr. York, the Ansar cult in America, or Farrakhan, 5%ers. It's very difficult to find a revert who is on deen. So these Muslims who are marrying reverts, they are playing with fire, really. The only revert you should marry is those who are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that's us. Oh, you said, why is that? The Aqidah is very important. You should have the right Aqidah. A person who's, for example, from Pakistan, who's Hanafi, or from Bangladesh, you don't find them joining Farrakhan or becoming Shia. You understand? They Hanafi, they stick to what they have, right? They may have some Barelvi Aqidah, but they don't wait. Reverts today, he's Murji, next week he's Khawarij, then he's Shia, then he's Sufi, then he's Hizb ut-Tahrir, then he's Salafi.
I suppose you could just say it's in the way of Allah, couldn't you? Really, seeking knowledge. You can get peace from everywhere. That's what the general thing is about in it.
You confuse it because nation of Kufr is not in the fold of Islam.
No, nation of Kufr is not in the fold of Islam, but many people, they join it, and when you give them the right Aqidah, they refuse to come out of it. Saeed.
Yeah, actually, some Muslims who come from Muslim families, they apostate, they were murtad, they were murtadeen, and then they came back into the deen. Meaning they weren't praying, they think they're better than the reverts. You understand what I'm saying? They were apostates, then they come back into the deen, and then these people, they think they're better than the reverts. You understand?
Yeah, if a person who was born in a Muslim home and then they apostated from the deen and they come back into the deen, they themselves, they are reverts. They are reverts. I mean, for example, the person who just turned up here at the Halakha and tried to create a scene, he's a revert. He went to America, then he became a Shia, insulting Abu Bakr and Omar and saying bad things about Aisha, the Prophet's wife Aisha. So it's very dangerous to marry your daughters nowadays to reverts because you don't know if they're going to remain in the deen. And I've seen many reverts, they leave Islam. They say, this is not for me. A lot of them, they leave Islam.
Not being funny, but I mean, from my experience with people that have obviously reverted to Islam, I find they have a better understanding of the deen, and I got to differ there because I think it's more recommended if you marry them because they have the pure Islam as opposed to this cultural Islam what a lot of people have.
Do the brothers agree with that?
In some cases,
Sheikh,
In
it's
some
the
cases.
majority. It's the majority.
Yeah, but look at the reverts here in the UK. The majority of them are either with Salafi, which is a deviant group, Sufi, and what other one? Some them Hizb ut-Tahrir, YMO, believing in democracy instead of Islam. It's very. How many reverts do we have in this room right now? Very few. So you cannot make a general statement and say the reverts are better than the born Muslims.
Sheikh, not being funny, in YM, I'm sure the majority aren't reverts. The majority of them are born Muslim. The majority of the Salafis are born Muslim. The majority of HD are born Muslim.
That's right. Yeah.
So that argument isn't valid.
So you don't agree with that argument? Yeah? Well, it's a controversial argument, but the reverts of today, not all of them are sincere. For example, take a look at Brixton Mosque. It's manned and governed by reverts, right? And they are cementing the throne of Kafir leaders. Understand? And they break people's noses to cement the throne of Kafir leaders. Which other masjid in this country, they kick you and beat you up to support Kafir leaders? They don't do that in any other mosque. So the one mosque which is run by Revert Brixton Mosque is the most dangerous mosque in supporting Kafir leaders. So this is a clear evidence that the reverts of today, most of them are hypocrites and they're not in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Shit, you got to ask who's educating these reverts to be cemented the throne of Kafir leaders.
They got evidence and they refused to.
I'm sure it's somebody that told them all this stuff.
It's not weird for you to say this, you know, because it's a lot of Pakistan and other people that do this sort of thing. It's just a couple group in Brixton. It's just only a couple group of maybe about 10 or 15 of them. And then the rest come from all over different places. and join, and that's like their headquarters, the Salafi headquarters there. So it's not like...
At the end of the day, the reverts who are on the deen, proper Aqidah, they are just a handful.
This is not beneficial knowledge, Jackie. You better hear the scholars on that. It's not beneficial.
Check, what
Got you
about
helping
these,
our problems.
prior to these elections, I went to various mosques and they were all saying you should vote and it's alright. We're having a meeting with various councillors and MPs and all that. Should a Muslim vote?
Now, I've covered that at length and the tape, democracy or Islam, which is the power. It's not the law.
Did you mention in your talk that Imam Hanifa, is it correct actually, also, that he said that you're not allowed to marry Jews or Christian women in the land of Darul Kufr, is that right?
I can't remember if it's if it is Abu Hanifa, but there are some scholars who forbid the marrying of Kafir women in Darul Kufr, because if you have a problem, your children will be taken away and given to the Kafir woman. And this is exactly what happens to many Muslims from the Gulf who come here and marry British women. These women, sometimes they apostate from the deen and take the children away. Most times when there is a divorce, these women apostate from the deen and then they go to the courthouse and said, I'm dumping him because he's a fundamentalist. She takes off her hijab, she goes to the courthouse and said, I'm dumping him because he's a fundamentalist. And the judge, he's happy to hear that, so he gives custody to the kafir, the apostate woman. Inshallah, that was the last question, so we close it on Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وأسأل إنسان القصة الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.